When a legend of country music arrives at a television studio, it is not merely a scheduled appearance. It is a collision of worlds, of expectation and reality. Reba McEntire, whose voice has resonated through generations, who has been both the comforting presence on countless radios and the center of intimate small-town memories, understood this well. Yet even she felt a tremor of anticipation as she stepped out of her limousine and approached the stage doors of The View. The morning air was brisk, the kind of crispness that hinted at clarity, but also the subtle tension that comes before the unpredictable. The studio was already buzzing before she entered. Stagehands move with purpose, adjusting cameras, checking lighting angles, making micro-adjustments to a set meticulously arranged for both aesthetic appeal and maximum visual engagement. The audience, a sea of eager faces, ranging from avid country fans to curious, casual viewers, waited with the patient impatience of people who knew something special was about to occur. Signs waved, hands clapped, phones were ready. Reba's arrival was anticipated, but none of them could predict exactly how the next hour would unfold. Reba's own preparation was methodical, though internal. She had spent decades mastering the art of public performance, not just singing and acting, but navigating the delicate, sometimes treacherous terrain of interviews. The questions had patterns, yes, but the traps lay in subtleties. Tone shifts, loaded phrasing, unexpected pivots into cultural or political commentary. She had encountered them before. She had sidestepped them before. But each appearance demanded focus, a calm attentiveness that allowed warmth and authority to coexist in perfect balance. The hosts awaited her arrival at the round table. Whoopi Goldberg, the anchor whose presence alone carried decades of authority. Joy Behar, whose mischievous intellect could steer a conversation into unexpected waters. Sunny Honeston, with precision honed in legal and political arenas. Sarah Haynes and Alyssa Farah Griffin, newer but sharp, bringing a mixture of admiration and inquisitiveness that energized the table. Each woman projected confidence and subtle calculation, aware of their own power to shape dialogue and narrative. Reba observed them in turn, appreciating their professional poise while quietly measuring the atmosphere. "Reba, it's wonderful to have you here," Whoopi's voice greeted her as she approached. There was warmth in the words, an authenticity that momentarily melted the edge of tension in the air. Reba's face lit with a smile, a wide and genuine beam that reached her eyes and resonated with decades of familiarity to anyone who had watched her grow into an icon. "Thank you, Whoopi. I'm so happy to be here," Reba replied, her tone a balance of humility and quiet confidence. She settled into her chair, feeling the familiar yet foreign sensation of live television energy vibrating through the floor. For the first few moments, the conversation followed the anticipated rhythm. Light compliments on her latest album, brief anecdotes about her touring experiences, reflections on fan interactions, the gentle teasing that comes naturally with rapport built over years of repeated interview cycles. The audience responded with laughter and applause, the kind that is warm, collective, yet polite, and the production crew exchanged subtle nods, comfortable with the early rhythm of the show. And then Joy Behar shifted the focus. It began innocuously, almost imperceptibly. A smile, a tilt of the head, a carefully measured pause before she spoke. "So, Reba," she said, her tone casual yet deliberate, "before we dive into your music, I wanted to ask something that's been on a lot of people's minds." Her words, though soft, carried an unmistakable charge, the prelude to a pivot that would transform the interview from celebration into interrogation. The audience, untrained as they were in the subtle signals of live television, shifted slightly in their seats, sensing a shift in the wind. The electricity in the studio changed from anticipation to tension, the kind of taut energy that hums in the spine of everyone present when something unpredictable is about to unfold. Reba listened carefully, maintaining her smile, allowing her calm exterior to anchor her presence in the room. She had been asked challenging questions before, certainly, but this wasn't about discomfort. It was about control, about narrative. Joy's eyes held a spark that Reba recognized immediately, a challenge couched as curiosity, meant to provoke reaction. People have been debating how country music artists handle political issues, Joy continued, her voice smooth but firm. I'm curious, where do you stand? The room exhaled collectively. A polite hush fell over the audience, but behind the cameras, the crew tensed. This was no ordinary inquiry. This was the pivot that could transform a pleasant morning segment into a headline-making confrontation. Reba's response was measured. She allowed a breath to pass, her smile softening, but her eyes sharpening. Well, Joy, she began, her voice calm, steady. Music has always been about connection for me. I think artists have a responsibility to bring people together, not push them apart. That's what country music has always been rooted in. Sunny leaned forward, her posture deliberate, commanding the kind of attention a courtroom might command. But don't you think that sometimes, by avoiding public commentary, artists in your genre send a message? Your audience is large, devoted, and spans multiple states with very different political leanings. Doesn't that bring a responsibility to speak more directly? Reba's smile softened into composure. Her voice was precise, measured, yet there was now a subtle edge, an alertness that hadn't been there in the first few minutes. Sonny, I think that's a big assumption. Country artists care deeply about what's going on. We just express it differently. Not everyone speaks the same way. Not everyone chooses the same platform. Joy's voice, calm, yet cutting, followed immediately. But sometimes staying quiet feels like ignoring issues that matter. People look to public figures for guidance, reassurance, or advocacy. And when they don't see that, silence can be hurtful. For the first time in the interview, Reba's demeanor shifted not into hostility, but into firm, controlled resistance. I hear you, she said, her voice tighter, more deliberate. But I don't think it's fair to generalize an entire genre or audience. We're not all the same. Whoopi intervened softly, hands raised, attempting to redirect the flow back to the album. Ladies, let's take a breath, she said, her voice a bridge over the rising tension. We want to talk about your music, too. But Joy persisted, leaning forward, intensity evident in her posture. I understand, Whoopi, but when someone has millions of fans, don't you think there's a responsibility to speak out against injustice when it arises? Reba strained in her chair. Her presence filled the space, unyielding. Joy, you don't know the private ways I support causes, the ways I help quietly. You don't know what I do with my platform behind the scenes. Joy's eyebrows arched, disbelief flickering across her face. But if it's private, how can people know where you stand? Silence sends a message too. The moment crystallized in the studio, tension hanging like a storm cloud just overhead. Reba's calm was no longer just a veneer. It was a shield and a sword. Her voice cut through the charged atmosphere with deliberate clarity. You're making assumptions about who I am and what I believe, and I don't appreciate it. The audience, sensing the shift, murmured in anticipation. Sarah and Alyssa exchanged uneasy glances. Sunny averted eye contact. Whoopi raised her hand in a futile attempt at reconciliation. But Reba's posture had already hardened, her voice unwavering, precise. I came here to share music, to bring joy and connection, and instead I feel cornered into defending assumptions. Joy's retort was sharp, almost instantaneous. If you can't handle honest questions, maybe interviews aren't for you. Reba froze for a moment, processing the words with the precision of decades of experience in live performance. Then her voice, quiet but dangerous, cut through the rising chaos. Did you just tell me I shouldn't do interviews because I won't answer questions the way you want? The audience leaned forward, captivated. The stage became a tense chessboard, each movement deliberate, each phrase a calculated step. Reba's command of presence was absolute. She rose, chair scraping against the floor, eyes locked on joy. I have survived things you cannot imagine. I built my career from the ground up. I have stood before crowds in honky-tonks and arenas alike, and never once, not once, have I been spoken to like this. Whoopi tried again to interject, but Reba continued, her tone unyielding, precise, slicing through the room's tension. You think because I don't publicly post opinions every day, I don't care? You think because I help